Good evening, Manchester Police. I'm sorry, citizens of Manchester. This is Chief Alan Ollenberg of the Manchester Police Department. I want to thank the staff here at Manchester Public Television for facilitating this forum. I decided to hold this type of event in order to answer questions from the public, as well as to introduce myself to the citizens of Manchester. It's my intent in the future to hold similar type events if this proves to be successful, and when is it appropriate given the COVID-19 pandemic. I'd like to hold some of these forums in person. If you have a question that you presented to us prior to tonight's meeting, I'm going to hopefully answer those tonight. And if you have any additional questions that you want to call in and ask, you can call the number on the screen, or you can email them to my public information officer, Heather Hamill, at HHAMEL@manchesternh.gov. That's HHAMEL@manchesternh.gov. One of the first questions we received was in regards to school resource officers. What are they doing now, given that these schools are, the Manchester School District has gone to full remote learning? For those who don't know, the department has 9 school resource officers that are assigned to all middle schools and high schools within the city, to include MST down on the south end. As a result of COVID, the school department moved to full remote, so the SROs will remain assigned to the juvenile division, and they'll still continue to communicate with their schools that they're assigned to, and handle any cases that juvenile-related cases that come out of those schools. And they're also assisting the school district with the meal delivery program for our students. So the school resource officers are staying fully engaged with their schools, but are assigned back at the PD and the juvenile division. Another question that came up was relative to neighborhood watch groups. Yes, we do have neighborhood watch groups, but given the COVID restrictions, they've had to be dialed back a little bit, and they're not meeting as frequently as they have been. So if you have interest in joining or forming a neighborhood watch group, I ask that you call Sergeant Tom Dubois of our Community Policing Division, and he can be reached at 792-5429. Again, that's Sergeant Tom Dubois at 792-5429. Another question was asked about drug activity, and specifically tips that people want to provide to drug activity that may be taking place in their neighborhood. Obviously, we encourage those type of tips, those type of phone calls that come into the PD. The best way to do that is through the crime line, and that can be done at 624-4040. And as those tips or information come in, we vet those out, and then we assign them as appropriate, and we'll conduct an investigation if we feel it's warranted. So obviously we encourage that type of information coming into the PD. Question that came up was about encrypted radios. We've got that question in the past. Prior administrations had decided to encrypt our radio transmissions, which I fully support and will continue to do so. I know that that's not relatively popular sometimes, and people want to hear, through their scanners or what other means they have to hear where the police are going or what they're doing. And I understand that, and I appreciate it, but we found that there were many instances where the safety of our officers were put at risk because there are some criminal elements that stay ahead of technology, just like we do, and some investigations were being compromised because of radio transmissions that were being heard. So I hope people understand that. We balance that with posting our daily call for service on manchesternh.gov. So you can go to that site, click on the police link, and once you get to the police page, you'll see a tab that says calls for service. You can click on that, and we update that every half hour, so you can see all the calls that we've gone to by date and by time. So I hope people understand why we'll continue to do that, and for me, it's something that I'm not open to changing. We received several questions about the homeless population, specifically in the downtown area, and we understand that that's a very hot topic, if you will, right now. The events that took place over at Superior Court and the action that was taken by the state. You got the public. We ask the public to understand that the homeless that are out there, many of them do not want services, and legally we cannot force people into a shelter, and we can't force them into treatment. And I'm not trying to be to lessen the seriousness of it, but a lot of these people are dealing with substance abuse disorders and mental health issues that they're either not ready to fully deal with, or they do not want to go into a facility where, quite frankly, they have to abide by rules and have to, maintain a healthy lifestyle, remain alcohol, drug-free, and some of them just are not ready to do that. In regards to the businesses downtown, we're fully aware of the impact that the homeless have downtown relative to panhandling, taking up sideways space, and we interact with the homeless every day. And my community policing officer know most of the homeless individuals by name. They know their story, they know their history, where they come from. So it's a very complex issue that is not solely a police issue. And fire department deals with it, the health department, FIT, New Horizons deals with it, the police department has their role in it. So we're all working together to try to address the issue. People on sidewalks downtown, without getting too deep into the law or the city ordinances that govern that, but essentially if they're not impeding the sidewalk with either their person or their belongings, then kind of the litmus test is if you can get a wheelchair by them, then they're not impeding the sidewalk. And I know that that doesn't sit well with a lot of people, but there's only so much the police department can do relative to enforcement to remove people from a city sidewalk. And we need to be mindful of the laws that we can enforce and the city ordinances that we can enforce, and make sure as a police department that we're not overstepping. People talk about aggressive panhandling, and I understand that a lot of people are, very well intended. When they give money, they give food, or they give clothes to the homeless, and specifically the homeless individuals downtown. I'm not saying that all the time, but I would say with a lot of confidence that a lot of time that the money that you're providing to the people panhandling downtown is going towards feeding their substance abuse disorder. And I ask that you reconsider when you think about giving them money, because all we're doing is enabling them. So just please be mindful of that. Question came in about what city ordinances does the police department enforce. The big ones that we address are park curfews, alcohol consumption in public, conduct in public places, and by that I mean people that openly urinate in public or go to the bathroom in public. We try to address those when we see it. Littering in public places and littering in general. Those are the main ones that we enforce. So that's all I have on the homeless. In the background here, they're going to be feeding me some questions, so pardon me for a minute. Another question, big topic has been bail reform. Prior administrations, to me, Chief Capano specifically, and myself, we've been vocal about bail reform. And, it's disheartening. It's very disheartening to the public when they see some of the violent criminals that were released on personal reconnaissance bail, and we understand that. It's just as disheartening for my officers who put the time and effort in, and the detectives that put all the work in, and a lot of time their paperwork won't even be completed, and somebody's already out on bail. So it's just as disheartening and concerning to us, relative specifically to public safety. So we want to do our part on that. So, the New Hampshire Association of Chiefs of Police is working currently. I had a meeting today about bail reform and working with this upcoming legislative body to not completely overhaul the bail statute, but somewhat go back to the way it was, and giving bail commissioners a little more authority than they have right now, so that we can hold people that are a danger to the public, because people are getting out on bail and they're reoffending, and it's very disheartening to us as well. Any questions that we got relative to speeding, dangerous intersections, all of those, I hear you. My traffic unit can be reached at 792-5439, specifically Sergeant Brown. It's 792-5439, and the traffic unit through grants, federal grants that we have to address traffic-related issues can be used where appropriate. We also have radar trailers that can be put out on problematic streets where speed is an issue. So if you have those concerns, then please bring them to our attention, and where we can address them, we will. Let me look at this question. This question, the caller is asking about a lot of violence in the area of Dollar Deluxe at Union and Auburn. We have addressed that issue. We have violence since we kind of cleaned up that alley, if you will. It's gotten a lot better over there. I'm not saying that the criminal element is not still there. They are, but the violence has decreased somewhat over there, and we've been able to make some significant arrests over there, and those investigations continue. So that's an area that we're paying attention to every day and every night. Another question I got was relative to, there's somebody had asked if President-elect Biden ordered a lockdown, would the Manchester police enforce that? We would approach that from the standpoint as with the mask mandate. More educate and ask for cooperation. That's the first time I've heard that talk before about a lockdown, but do I anticipate the police department would ever go around and start arresting people for violating that type of mandate? I really don't. I think that's not a very good road for the police department to go down. Another question coming in. So the question was about how officers are trained to de-escalate situations so force and firearms don't need to come into play. We train our officers on that yearly and during every firearms training and use of force training that we have. Some of you may not be familiar, but there was a Governor's Commission on Law Enforcement Reform. They came out with approximately 48 recommendations, many of which one of them was the training statewide, and in 2021 they're looking for each police department to, at a minimum, train their officers 24 total hours a year on use of force, de-escalation, cultural diversity, cultural awareness, bias-based policing, those type of topics. So in 21, I'll be implementing a program where each officer will receive at a minimum 40 hours of training a year. They'll be removed from their assignment for their designated week, and they'll be assigned to the training division for that 40 hours, and that will cover all the topics that I just mentioned: use of force, firearms, de-escalation, legal updates, bias-based policing, culture awareness, those type of topics that we always do, but we're going to try to standardize it so that we capture the officer's attention for 40 hours a week and provides them more predictability relative to their training. Anything above and beyond that 40 that they get is additional and is welcome, but I think this is the best way for the PD to conduct their training. Question about COVID-19. Yes, I do have cases. I'm not going to shy away from that. We're like any other public agency or private corporation or anywhere in the country that's dealing with COVID-19. We have cases. I'm not going to get into the numbers, but I can tell you that we are still operationally effective. We deal with it every day. We have a mask mandate within the building. I've tried to limit the two-man vehicles, if you will, 2 officer vehicles, to anywhere that we can limit the officer's exposure. We try to do that every day, but we're in a line of work where that's not always possible, and so there's a certain level of risk that we take, and we know we're interacting with the community 24/7, and at some point our officers are going to get it, and we have officers now that do have it, but we're dealing with it, and we'll get through it. Question came in about how people can get involved with the PD. I would say, a community watch group, neighborhood group. That's one way where you can get involved. When we come out of COVID-19, and hopefully we will, because we need to as a country, more importantly as a community. We have a Citizens Police Academy. That's one way for you to get involved, and when that time comes and we can stand that program back up, we will. So I encourage those that have interest in that, they can reach out. You'll see that will be advertised. That's one way for you to get involved. Another way to get involved is, let's be honest. I mean, if you hear this before, if you see something, say something. It may seem small to you, it may seem minor in nature, but it may be that one call that we needed. Anything that you feel is out of place, not right, we encourage people to call the police department, and we'll respond where appropriate. And if we think it's something that we need to focus our efforts on, then we certainly will. Bear with me, another question coming in. I'm all by myself in this room. What are common things that police get called for that they really shouldn't be called for? That's a tough one. I'll be honest, sometimes we get calls from parents that, my child won't listen to me. Is that really a police matter? I would say that it's not. We get calls like that more often than you would think. And relative to calls that should go to fire or another agency, no, I wouldn't say anything specific. I just think people have got into this habit of, if something's not going right in their life, and although it may not be criminal in nature, that, well, let me call the police department, they'll fix it. And I'm not trying to be insensitive, but not everything in society is a police matter. And so often if you find that a police officer shows up and tells you that this isn't a police matter, it's not that we're insensitive to your concern or the issues that you're having, but if it's not criminal in nature and it's not something the police department can help you with, then we'll tell you that, but we'll also try to point you in the right direction. That, hey, maybe you should call this agency or call this agency, and if we can guide him or her in the right direction, then we certainly will. Hold on. Are there more domestic violence or child abuse calls? I don't have the statistics in front of me, but I think it's fair to say that, with people being home together, when we're not really home together all the time, so tensions rise, and people find out what their relationship's all about. So have we seen an actual spike in domestic violence related to COVID-19? I can't tell you that for certain, but domestic violence calls are prevalent. It's probably one of the largest calls for service that we have here in the city. And I have a domestic violence unit that is very busy conducting follow-up investigations and making sure that every victim is addressed properly and that their needs are addressed properly. Question is, people deal with very difficult things every day. Is there help for officers who handle these calls? One of my biggest concerns as a chief of police is the resiliency and wellness of my police officers. That's my number one priority, and that's the one thing that probably keeps me up at night. So Manchester Police is kind of at the forefront. We have a critical incident management team within the PD that also includes licensed clinicians from the private sector. I have over 25 officers that are part of that team that are as an additional duty that should we have a critical incident, that team is notified, and that team is brought in to conduct debriefs for my officers that, witnessed the death of a small child, witnessed a fatal motor vehicle accident. We're the first off at a homicide scene, and we make great efforts to reach out to those officers, offer them whatever services they need, and make a debrief available to them, which the chief of police is not part of. I'm removed from the process, so it allows for a little more anonymity, and officers to come and speak openly in front of their peers without the chief present, to voice their concerns. They can also do it privately, and if need be, if they need additional resources, then we make sure they get what they need. This job is, don't want to sound like the old man in the room, but 24 years ago when I became a police officer, you didn't dare raise your hand if you saw something horrific, and you just were told, deal with it, put your head down and keep going, and come back in the next night. We've come a long way as a profession, and we need to understand that our young men and women are seeing things on a daily basis that some people will never see in their life, and that's good for them. But we need to keep our officers that we have on a path of wellness, that they know that their police department and their chief cares, and that's an atmosphere that I strive for every day. I'm reading the question. I'm not being rude. I just want to read this. But essentially, the question is, are people leaving the profession because of the current climate surrounding police? Are people applying, and are we hiring? Yes, we're always hiring. Have the numbers declined of the amount of people that are applying? Absolutely. There used to be a time where 500, 600, 700 people would show up for a police exam. We gave one recently, and 50 people showed up. So that's what we're up against. And a lot of it has to do with the national narrative on law enforcement, which in some cases may be warranted, in some cases it's not. I'll be honest with you. And we have people that have been in this profession for 10 or 15 years, and due to a change in the retirement system that, quite frankly, was unfair to a great number of people in my agency, that they signed on to a contract, if you will, for a 20-year retirement, and then halfway through the game, the state changed it on them and now tells them they have to do 25 years. That's a long time doing this profession. So our numbers that's one reason why our numbers are down. And I think the other main reason is, like I said, the narrative on law enforcement. A lot of young men and women are, they're bright people, and they look in from the outside and they say, why do I want to subject myself to that? Why do I want to run the risk of being the next story on CNN or Fox News when I, quite frankly, did my job and I did it the right way? But sometimes the truth doesn't matter, and a lot of people don't want to take that risk, and I get it. You're always going to have those people that will get into this job because it's what they wanted to do their entire life. But yeah, we are seeing a decline of people looking to get into this profession. My number one goal for the city going forward, quality of life and reducing violent crime. So there'll be some things in the future, very near future, that I'm working to accomplish so that we can make sure that we have a legitimate and focused plan on reducing violent crime that is more proactive in nature as opposed to reactive. You're always going to have reactive police work, but I want to try to, and we will, develop a program to address violent crime that will have a lot of components to it, from inside the police department and from some of our community partners, to reduce violent crime in a meaningful way. It's not going to happen overnight, but that's my number one priority in terms of crime, is reducing the violent crime in the city. And as I'm not naive to it, it's out there. I'm not going to run from it or tell you that it doesn't exist, because it does. And we need to have a real plan to address it. Somebody call in. Just trying to see if anything else is coming over here. Yeah, are you doing a lot of community policing? Our community policing division is always busy. They do a lot, but a lot of stuff that they would normally be doing has been placed on hold because of COVID. So we have a lot of restrictions there that I have to abide by. So there's only so much we can do, but they are out there every day. The area officers, and when manning allows, I'm going to try to increase the number of officers assigned to the community policing division. There's still things that we can do. You know, I've met with the Mike Skelton from the chamber to let him know that, you know, the police department wants to, you know, assist in his mission with the chamber. It's very, very important. I understand what he's trying to get done, and you know, the obstacles that he has during COVID, and how the police department can be, you know, part of his solution as well. So yeah, we're trying to engage with the community as much as we can, given COVID, but it's difficult sometimes. We'll wait for a couple more questions. Maybe somebody wants to call in. No? Okay, we'll give it a couple more. Okay. It's about a half hour. It's not bad. Like I said in the opening, we'll fully intend to keep doing this. We'll see what the feedback is, and like I said, I want to try to do some of these in person when COVID restrictions are lifted. And again, if anybody has a question that they want followed up after this, they didn't get a chance to get it in, then please reach out to Heather Hamill at HHAMEL@manchesternh.gov, and we'll certainly do our best to answer your question. So I wish everybody in Manchester a happy holiday season. Please be safe. Lock your vehicles when you're down at the mall or you're shopping. Secure your vehicles at night, and please do your part to you know, not to become a victim of a theft from your vehicle, or another one that we see is people warming their cars up in the morning and leaving their vehicle running. It's more than likely, you know, going to cause your vehicle to be stolen. So small things like that you can all do on your part to make our jobs a little bit easier. And I thank everybody in the community for their support of the Manchester Police Department, and we hope to continue to be a good partner in the community. Thank you, and happy holidays.